Hey guys, turkey season is in full swing right now, and if you are planning on getting after it, make sure to pick up some Meat Eater Phelps turkey calls to stuff into the old turkey vest or into your fanny pack right now. I carry a few different things. I like to use mouth calls, and I like to use pot calls. Mouth calls or diaphragms, I like them because it gives you hand-free calling, meaning when you're working a bird up close, you can have your gun on your knee, finger on the trigger, ready to roll, and still be making turkey sounds. I like pot calls because I just like pot calls. I enjoy calling with a pot call. Whatever direction you go, including a box call, which I don't personally use too much, but they're fun and great, and I started out with them. Yanni, on the other hand, one of my main turkey hunting buddies, he loves box calls. And what's funny is I'll now and then look to him and give him the look that means get out your box call and find us a turkey. So it's not that I don't like him. I just have Yanni use his. Then I don't have to carry it. Go to Phelps Game Calls. Get calls that are made in the USA and get calls that'll get them close. Find yours at phelpsgamecalls.com today.
Hey, I'm the taillight repairman.
And I'm the Jones.
Hi, you listen too.
Yeah.
What is going on, everyone? We are truckcasting. We are headed north. It's exciting times around these parts. We're together, but we're going to have a split soon. And it's not a banana split, although there are a few bananas up here. We're going to go a couple different directions. But we got a story to lead into that, to tell you more about that here in a little bit. But for right now, Tyler Jones is in the driver's seat. He's eyeing down this law enforcement officer who's got somebody else pulled over right now, thankfully, because we got about one trailer light in between all of us right now. Hopefully this isn't too incriminating. We try to make them work, so
yeah, well,
we're asking for grace.
We've only got 3 dudes that help us out here at the Element, and one of them wasn't here, so I won't put the blame on him. The other 2 did a good job of not seeing our tail light fall off, going about 3 miles an hour and running over it.
Dadgummit. Well, at least thankfully it's just the tail light cover, so the light still works.
Yeah.
I just had to duct tape. Like on this trailer, there's some running lights that don't work as well. So I took the cover off of one of them and taped it over the light, and now it shines brighter than the true tail light, which is nice.
The inheritance of this vehicle has been good and bad.
Yeah, for sure. It's been comfortable. It's pretty nice. If y'all don't have a pop-up camper,
don't get one.
I would say it's a good thing to look at.
It is, man. Sucker's got a good AC and heater, so I'll take that.
They're inexpensive. Yeah. The new ones are super expensive, but these things are floating around out there, and it ain't like you just got to make sure the canvas is good and that the cables aren't broken. And if that's the case, you're rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
Dude, and I don't know, ours has got a bigger bed on one end, and Tyler and I think you did it on purpose. I don't know, but we ended up in that one.
Dude.
It's plenty big enough to where Tyler and I don't touch it, which we're not into that.
No, we ain't into touching. That's for sure.
In our sleep, at least.
Tell them a story about you and Brendan, though.
So if you listen to the Element podcast for a while, you know that there's a guy named Brendan Rhodes, one of my best friends from high school. And, I've always been pretty comfortable in my stance, if you know what I'm saying. And so in high school, we just slept in the same bed. No big deal. If he stayed over at the house, we didn't make a pallet or anything. One morning I woke up, and Brendan, he's got big old lips, okay? So they're real noticeable. And handsome guy, let me tell you. I woke up and our foreheads were touching, just straight up, just forehead to forehead. His lips were all up in my face, and that was pretty scarring.
That was the last time y'all slept together, huh?
Yeah, it might have been, actually. I don't know. Dude, a lot of crazy things happened when Brendan and I stayed the night at each other's place. He stayed over at my house more often because he had a couple brothers, and they didn't like to hunt, so he came to my place, and we definitely like to hunt. And touch foreheads. So, but I'll tell another story before we get into what we're going to talk about. We were getting ready to go to the coast, and we're rigging rods and stuff. We're going to leave the next morning.
Shark fishing? or something else.
Yeah, shark fishing. And I had one of those case toothpick knives. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
They're real sharp, right? Not sharp as in like cut you, but
stab you real quick.
Yeah, they'd stab you real quick. But they're cool looking. I always thought that those were a very attractive pocket knife because they're lightweight and they're pretty, and I liked having that thing. Well, I was cutting a piece of 80-pound mono, which is just a little short of weed eater line. It's pretty thick, so it take a little gumption. And I was probably 17 at the time, and I hadn't really learned all the things of knife safety like I should. And I'm pulling this thing back at me, right? And this is just not what you're supposed to do. Let this be a lesson of what not to do. And I'm pulling hard, and I'm thinking it's just going to cut and everything's going to be fine. Well, then it just like kind of snapped, and I had that force against the knife, and I took that knife right up to my face and stuck it right in my cheek about an inch below my eye.
Oh, my gosh.
I think I still have a little scar right there. It bled. But, like, dude, I was a quarter inch from just cutting my eyeball out.
Oh, my gosh, dude.
It was scary, dude. Brendan likes to tell that story. I said something like, Brendan, I almost just died or something like that. Because that knife is long. If I'd have hit my eyeball right, it went right into the brain, dude.
Dadgummit, dude.
I know.
It's scary, man.
It is scary, man.
I was thinking about that one time. I had an awesome job one time for about a week of cleaning the fence line around the sewage treatment plant at a resort one time when I was in high school. So they rented a wood chipper for us, which is, by the way, one of the scariest machines ever made by humans.
Yeah.
And, me and my buddy Chris, are 16 years old probably. And we got this thing out there, and we're cleaning this fence line off. Everything we can, cut down and clean off and chop and everything else, we throw in that wood chipper and chip it up. And, dude, I hit myself with like a vine or something so hard in the eye one time, I thought I lost my eye, dude.
Man.
And, I think about that time a lot, especially. But, like, when I think about this thing, which I'm about to say, is how many times over the course of your life are you just so close to just losing your arm, losing your finger, losing your, life?
As a young man, especially if you're outdoorsy or, do farm stuff, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a whole lot. Like,
scary, dude.
It is, man.
I don't want my kid to have to deal with that. You know what I mean?
I would say I'm with you, but better off learn it when you're young before you're too big enough to hurt yourself real bad,
yeah, you're probably right.
Like, if you learn to fall off a bucket when you're 12, it hurts a lot less than falling off a ladder when you're 20,
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know. There's like a weird dynamic there that you have to approach a lot sooner than I do.
Yeah.
I got another eyeball story. This relates to deer hunting.
I like it.
This is like a thing that Steve likes to do, so we're going to gross y'all out real good. So I was in 7th grade.
Talking about Stephen A. Smith?
Yeah, Stephen. Yeah, Stephen B. Jordan, I think is his name, right? I was in high school or 7th grade, and we just got this new deer lease. And I didn't even archery hunt then. Like, we were there in October setting up a box blind to hunt out of, and we built this box blind. I was real proud of it then. I was in pride back then. And I built this box blind myself, and cut out the windows and put the hinges on and all that and painted it. It was a big deal to paint your own box blind. If you're from the South, you probably kind of get this a little bit. It was kind of cool to set up your box blind and stuff. If you're not from the South, just imagine like a redneck blind, but it actually being redneck. That's what we did.
I thought you were saying if you're not from the South, then just imagine how you used to paint your Barbie houses, and that's the same, but it's camo.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, we had, my dad had a little Nissan pickup, and we had this thing strapped in the back of the truck. Drove to the deer lease, which is funny that it's a thing, but like we had a deer lease that was like 45 miles from the house, and it's like the same habitat that we live in. So could we just not find one like right up the road? Like we didn't gain anything by going there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't know how that worked. I was excited because I was too young to care.
Is this Clarksville?
No, it was over there, the other side of like Mount Vernon somewhere. It was like where What's
You're going the wrong direction.
You know where
by the
Lake
way.
Monticello is?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, don't go that way.
No.
If you're gonna, there's the other side of Lake Monticello.
Yeah.
And it was one of those real cool things that the family also kind of hunted it when we weren't there. I love that. You know, it's a good, you know, communism is the best at deer lease. But
and just other things too.
yeah. Anyways, we were like, cedar trees are synonymous with deer hunting, right? Like it's just like, oh yeah, get on that cedar, you know. So you gonna hide that box blind in that cedar? Like, no, the deer gonna get used to it if you put it in the middle of pasture. It doesn't matter. So we were like taking like a quarter out of this cedar tree to nestle that box blind up in, right? Well, I'm a really big seventh grader, like, and I think I'm the strongest guy in the world. I was the strongest guy at school, you know. So I'm like, I'm just gonna go in there and break these limbs off. Well,
Cedar's the worst.
oh, I reach up. I'm tired. And grab this cedar limb with my right hand. It's then the trunk is on my left, right? And it's a cedar tree. It's probably like 10 foot tall. So the trunk is about the size of your neck right there at the height that I'm breaking this limb off. It's about 5 foot high. And I go and I grab it, and I'm thinking it's going to break off at the trunk. Well, no. I bend this thing really far, and it breaks off right at my hand. And all of that kinetic energy, exactly, snaps back and hits me square in the left eye.
Oh.
And I just go to squalling. I'm not crying, but I'm doing the whole like, my eye, you know, like. And my dad's like, he's like, I just knew I was gonna look over and there's like gonna be an eyeball hanging from that stick.
Dad, kill it, dude.
My eye was intact, but my eyelid got ripped like a good 3/4 of an inch straight up. So, like, it's just kind of flopping around. Yeah.
Dude.
And if you look real close, I still got some eyelashes that are a little crooked right there. But I had to have LASIK because I had, I had some cedar up in my lens right there. And I remember that LASIK being real weird because, like, you could see, like, your eyes open. Right? So you're just aware of this thing happening.
I can't do it. I cannot think about it.
It was weird. But
I'm about to throw up.
Just the things that, like... almost put you out of the business. You know what I mean? Like, imagine if I'd have done that the other way, and then my right eye would have actually got put out. I'd have been like, you know, old Gentry lefty back there shooting with the wrong hand. You know, like it would have been. It would have just altered your hunting life.
I know.
And
it's
I
scary,
think about
man.
that stuff when I start going out on
Praise
these trips.
God, man.
I know. From whom all blessings flow.
That's right.
And, like, I think about that stuff when we go out on these trips of, like, you know, because, you know, I'm risky. But I have to tell myself sometimes, is it really worth, like, jumping this 6-foot creek when I could, like, tear a meniscus and then, like, not be able to go elk hunting next year or something? You know, like, there's always this thing of, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that, you know? Like, and I think that there's definitely a way you can lean too far the other side of the pendulum of, like, just being overly cautious about things. Like,
You
part
mean
of, like,
YouTube cops?
Yes.
You need to actually make sure you have a double hitch overhand right there instead of a underhand.
You know, it's like, come on, guys, it's not.
Close the screw gate. I love those.
Oh, that's right.
Exclamations.
Yeah. We actually have got a couple videos on our channel about, you know, how to hunt from a saddle, how to shoot from a saddle, how to climb in a saddle. You know, we use those cruiser saddles. They're super comfortable, very, very safe. Tyler and I both use the XC, which is a single panel, but it's pleated, so it, like, makes for a very comfortable sit. And I actually
I'm gonna be a size 1 before we know it if I'm not careful here.
Oh my gosh!
I'm trying not to get
three
sick
sizes,
again.
and you might just think that you fall into size 2, but that's not the case. Chad will tell you different. He's real good at this size.
It's actually more about your height and weight, I think, more than just your weight. It's like it's not just based on your, like, waist size.
Yeah. Well, anyways, they're super comfortable. And I'm hoping to be wearing one a lot this trip because I'm kind of tired of chasing these deer on the ground sometimes. I like to hang in a tree. Shot one from the tree, one stick up recently, but we'll talk about that in a second. But if you haven't, go check out Cruiser on the internets, on the webs, and get yourself a saddle because it's the most comfortable hunt you're gonna have this year.
Yeah,
so
super. Man, it's just as far as just being mobile and you know, making things work. It's the way to get into a tree and kill something.
And you don't have to break the limbs of a cedar tree to put your box blind up.
That's
whenever you hunt out of a
man.
saddle.
That's right.
It keeps you safe in more than one way. You know?
Yep.
Yep. So anyways, do you have any more dismemberment stories that we should share?
And because I've been a guitar player, I've tried to be careful for a long time now.
You are very careful with your hands.
Yep.
Yeah, Tyler is a glove wearer.
I am.
Just watches out. I can tell you, I don't know what it is, but he gets more stickers in his fingers than anybody I've ever met.
Hey, I don't know what it is. What is it? I don't know what it is either.
You're always getting a sticker in your hand.
Heckgummit, dude.
I don't know.
I had one. We got back from South Dakota, and I'm, been around the house for a little bit or whatever. And I got shorts on because it's 400 degrees in Texas, even in October. And I looked down and kind of got this thing that's like whelping up. Looks like a daggum spider bite,
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't pay much attention to it. Well, the next day it was even worse. And I was like, looking at it, I was like, there's a thorn in my knee.
Oh.
It's been there for like 5 days, I didn't even know it was
like
in there.
that too after that. What were we getting into in South Dakota? Is it from whenever we did all that nighttime business or something?
Oh, that's probably it. Yeah, we were tracking a deer in the night and had so much daggum just stickers, all kinds of stickers and thickness. That was one of the thickest places I've ever been.
It was. No wonder Big Bucks lived there.
Yeah.
And if you're wondering, hey guys, where's that story? Where's that footage? Do not despair. You will be able to see it. However, it will be in a little bit different format than you're used to.
Yeah.
If you haven't heard, we have been blessed with the opportunity to do a little bit of stuff on the Meat Eater channel as well as our own channel. So that hunt will be on the Meat Eater channel next, early fall. So that and a bunch of the other cool stuff we're doing, all that buck truck business that you've been seeing will be on that. But we will have some more element stuff coming out pretty soon.
Yeah, we're actually doing a lot more hunts in the next few weeks for that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
sorry about maybe the little bit of lack of videos for you on the Element channel, but just know it's one of them deals. It's like it's like planting seeds, man. The payoffs on the back end. You know, whenever that tomato finally ripens up, and that Cherokee Purple gets a little bit of that darkness on the bottom, it's going to be good, and that's what's going to happen next summer.
We actually we're pre-recording this a little bit ahead of time because Casey and I are going to split ways, like you said, banana splits. So we have to kind of get this recorded a couple days in advance. By the time this airs and you hear this, there's a pretty good chance we've got a newer video out.
Mm-hmm.
Casey's chasing some deer on public and has a really close encounter. Should have gotten it done, but sometimes the big buck sits up or stands up to pee, and you're in a bad spot, and that's kind of what happens. So.
Yeah, and it's by no means Greg was filming me that day. It's by no means his fault, but it was one of those situations where if we weren't filming, it could have gone differently. But because we were filming, it just didn't happen.
I had one of those instances in Oklahoma recently, actually.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's kind of crazy how much that changes. And I'm not trying to complain. We love filming. I can't imagine not filming hunts now, because it's just, if nothing else, you talked about this a lot whenever we first started doing this. It kind of was your way to convince me to film hunts, I think. But just being able to watch it yourself, man, is so cool.
Yeah.
I love getting to relive this stuff.
I know, man.
And so I'm not, like I said, not blaming Greg
dude, you make a good point, though. Like, what's crazy about this stuff is, like, you were asking me about a mount recently, form, and you're like, what do you think about a full sneak? And I was like, well, I wouldn't do it with a pencil neck deer,
Mm-hmm.
And then you told me which deer you're talking about, which we'll talk about here in a second. And he doesn't have a pencil neck, so it works. But you're like, man, I just picture that dude walking under some willows, or whatever, kind of in a full sneak. And I was like, dude, what's crazy is I was not there, but I saw some of the footage of him walking in, and that's how I picture him too in my mind. And that's the thing is, like, you've got these moments that that sometimes you picture and as the deer comes in or in the hunt, right? But, like, you kind of blank on other moments too.
Yeah.
And so just to fill those gaps in with footage is just a cool thing.
It's kind of a give and take too, because like there will be moments that, like, my mind's eye is actually better than the camera, but I watch it enough to where, like, I kind of almost forget my experience, and then the camera's takes over, which is, I don't know, it's kind of cool, I guess, too, because it's what everybody gets to experience, So, but I kind of do my best to not lose that like first person point of view too that I have on these things sometimes.
For sure.
But the camera does catch things that I don't get to see as well because I'm grabbing my bow or I'm like for instance on. Well, we don't want to tell that yet. Let's get into that.
Let's do it.
Let's get into it a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so we decided to go up to old Oklahoma, Smokelahoma, Joklahoma. Depends on who you are, really, what you call it.
There's definitely some Joklahoma on my end.
There's even a little Toklahoma. We weren't a part of that.
No, we weren't.
But there is a lot of that going on.
There is, man.
Yeah.
I thought about that the other day.
It's kind of weird, kind of cool. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it ain't my thing, but you know what? Freedom, let freedom ring, baby.
That's right, man.
Anyways, it's as y'all know, like the rut this year is weird, and I think it's kind of a fun thing, or not fun, but it's kind of like the grind. People like to talk about the grind. They also like about the rut's weird this year, you know. But I really think it was.
Well, we've been talking to people from all across the country.
Yes.
Another thing you may or may not know, we've been running the Rut Fresh podcast for Mark Kenyon on the Wired to Hunt platform. And so every week we have to talk to at least 4 dudes from across the country and, hear what they've been seeing. And so I feel like we have a pretty accurate picture of what's gone on literally like almost nationwide in the rut, and everybody has had this sentiment in the first couple of weeks of it being hot and and being lackluster, movement.
Yeah.
And suddenly things, we've gotten some weather and things seem to be changing in a lot of areas right now.
I think that if you took a rutcation early and it was tough for you, I'm sorry, but I think that patience is going to pay off a lot this year for a lot of people. You don't need to feel like, I'm going to do this hype at the end too, but let's go ahead and throw it in here right now.
All right.
If it's November 10th and you hadn't killed your buck yet, do not despair, right? Like there's still got 20 good days, if not more, after that, right? Like don't feel like you got to bust out the smoke pole to make it happen, or to that you're just not going to see a big buck this year.
I mean, there's probably a lot of people that have seen the ranch buck, and that deer I killed on November 30th. He came in if you've seen it. He comes in nose and does around, and he's there in daylight and at 8:30 nose and does around. And when I first saw him, before I ever 15 minutes before I ever got footage of him, he was following a doe, just walking right behind her. So that's November 30th. And we have a fairly regular rut date set. We're probably a week behind most places in the country or so. So there's hope. For sure. Yeah. And we can go on more on that later on.
But I think that the big emphasis here is that the first couple weeks of November were overly hot. There were does being bred and there were bucks doing the thing. But, truth be told, I think it was hot enough that it affected buck activity, which is strange, right? Because the cycle is the cycle. I'm convinced of it, right?
But does the drought affect the cycle?
It might, dude. I don't know. See, that's the thing. And we talked about this too. We probably have already talked about this on the podcast, but it's good to talk about. Like our Julian calendar, or whatever you want to call it, that we have now, like the current modern calendar that the world operates on, is not a fixed. Right? November 7th is not the same day every year of the lunar cycle, of the diurnal cycle, or however you want to call it, right? Like the day November 7th is not always 12 hours and 47 minutes long. It's going to vary, I would think, up to maybe a 7-day cushion on each side, possibly, for how that falls on a calendar versus how it actually works with like the amount of daylight that enters a deer's eye, right? So that's going to change. Weather's going to have an impact on this stuff. I'm going to try to not make this weird or whatever, but human females, whenever they spend a lot of time together, sync up with their cycles.
Yeah.
Right? It's a proven thing. It's kind of weird. It's a social thing that we can't quite understand. Women in general are that way.
Yep, a social thing we can't understand.
That's right. But I don't know why they're so social, man. I won't be in a hole by myself. Anyways, I wonder if, like, here's a hypothesis for you, okay? And it would take a lot more proving than I care to do to test it. But maybe the drought concentrated does in a more specific area because they had to relate to water or specific food sources more, and so the does synced up in a different fashion than they normally would for the fall. Or maybe it's food related with the drought where they aren't as healthy going into the fall, so maybe those cycles are just a little weird. Who knows?
Or same thing, maybe the food is very localized, so all the does are spending time together.
Maybe it's a buck thing, too. We might be putting too much emphasis on the does. Maybe the bucks... okay, here's another thing we've noticed. There's a lot of broken tines this year, like more than normal. And we were talking about this before the podcast, that it probably has something to do with nutrition. Or it could have to do with density of bucks. Maybe they're closer together, so they're encountering each other more, and they're breaking more antlers. I don't know, but there's a bunch of social stuff. I think Tony Peterson talks about this. He's like, I think he said something to this effect. The guy who knows the most about whitetail probably still only knows like 3% about what actually happens in the whitetail world.
Yeah.
You know, so like there's so many things out there that we'll never have a grasp of. And this is where like a sense of collectivism can be a good thing, right? Where you group your thoughts together about a passion like we all have, and we can share this stuff on podcasts and talk to other hunters, and maybe I know 0.5% about whitetail and you know 0.5% about whitetail, but then we can combine those and talk about it together, and all of a sudden we like, I never thought about that, man. You know?
Yeah.
So, all this to talk about how the first part of November was actually very difficult rut hunting.
Yeah.
You and I, we've talked about this, about our Kansas stuff. We killed bucks in not super rutty fashions. Yours was like probably a 1 out of 10 on the rut scale.
I mean, I think he was checking, scent checking.
Okay.
So, I mean, I don't know if he was going to be running does or anything. There weren't any does around, but he was definitely walking the downwind side of that draw, basically.
That's kind of what my buck was doing too. He was actually on the upwind side of things, so I don't know.
That worked.
Yeah, it worked really good for me. But he did come into antlers. But I always think about that as being a shoulder tactic. Like it's not a dead dog heat of the rut, my favorite thing to do. But like on the front or the back of it, I think they're real responsive to that because they're looking. He's thinking about that stuff, and deer are fighting because there's just a few does in. So, kind of killed them doing ruddy stuff, but it was hot. Their hawks weren't just dripping nasty. They were just kind of getting into it a little bit. My deer smelled a little bit, not crazy. But then we went to Oklahoma, and it was like dead. Now, it's, a good bit further south, right? Mm-hmm. And that probably has some effect on it too. But, I mean, we were just not seeing rut action at all. There would be fields with those in it and just not even a 2-year-old out there.
That's weird. Yeah. I mean, there was, like you did rattle a buck in for me the first evening. Mm-hmm. We were driving around. We were close to public. And basically, Greg sees a deer. All of us are in the buck truck, and we kind of make a quick plan, pile out, and long story short, you rattle a buck across the road onto public, and he was not coming straight to you, nor was he coming downwind, which is weird.
Yeah.
So he was just kind of was coming to see if he could see something, but he wasn't super fired up. Mm-hmm. And then I did have another buck that was following a doe that I made an attempt at that was not super amped up, but he was walking 50 yards behind a doe. I was coming down into bedding. Mm-hmm. So, but like, if that deer would have been fired up, we would have killed him.
Yeah.
But he was not even fired up enough to follow the doe, even though he wasn't very spooked when he saw us.
I think they're just kind of like, because we saw a buck doing a deal like that too, where he's with the doe for about 15 seconds, and then she kind of split one way and he went the other. Yeah. He's just kind of like, I'm going to do just the tiniest bit more than just kind of be near you. I'm going to nudge you a little bit.
There was mornings and evenings where like we were sitting either in spots that were like should have been super highways for deer movement, bucks traveling up and down wind and checking wind for does, and or places that like you could see tons of country. And one morning, dude, you saw like probably one group of 10 and several other small groups of does that had like no bucks with them.
Oh yeah, bedded in the open.
Yeah.
You know, like I've also noticed this too, that does do this certain thing this time of year, where especially in the evenings, they do this staging thing where they want to be seen. I think they'll find either elevation or an open pocket in the back of a field where they're not feeding, they're not doing anything. They're just staged up, just kind of waiting, almost like, hey, guys, I'm on display, you know, kind of like girls strutting around. You know, that's kind of what I think that the does get molested by the bucks and they kind of get tired of it in the rut, but at the same time, like, God has given them a sense of need to reproduce too. So, like, there's some part of a doe who also is in estrus more than just the physical sense this time of year. Like, socially, they are accepted. I mean, like the standing estrus thing, right? Like, it's a thing that people talk about. But I think that they even do this whole, like, come check me out kind of deal. And I saw does doing that. There was no bucks in the evenings. And it's like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And we saw a buck from the road. I love to buck truck it. And when I say that, I mean drive around in the truck and just look at deer. And I had the opportunity to do that on this trip a good amount, which is nice because I usually am last day Sally just trying to do whatever I can to find one. And we saw at 8:30 on a misty morning, which I like to hunt. I love an overcast kind of misty morning for some historical reasons.
Starting with nameless. Maybe not starting with, but
yeah.
Yeah.
And I saw a buck at 8:30 bedded underneath a cedar tree, a mature buck by himself, no other deer anywhere in the area. And that just shouldn't happen in mid-November. I mean, it's like,
are you sure he's a buck?
oh,
I mean, is that what he identified as?
I didn't get a chance to ask him.
I gotcha.
But he had the hardware and the software. So
Really?
yeah.
How about that?
He was no antler doe, I don't believe. So he was the real deal Lucille, and I just couldn't believe, like, it was a deer that you and I would shoot for sure, like big buck, and just no interessante, man. Just weird, but I did have a good hunt on this trip. I have historical data in the area. We actually hung a Moultrie camera there a year ago, and it is still running. It's one of those cell cams. It's a Delta base, and that thing, we had it set conservatively throughout the year to only upload once a day, and it only takes one picture when it triggers. You know, it's not on burst or anything. Like, it's almost been there a year right now, and it still has like 30% battery.
I believe Moultrie sent us their very own Moultrie batteries.
Yeah.
And whatever they, I don't know who makes them or what they're made out of, but they wrap them with a Moultrie wrap, and those are the ones that are in there, I think.
Yeah, it's nothing fancy. They're
I don't think they're lithiums.
Batteries. Yeah. So they work really good, and I'm very thankful for the data we have for that camera because it sent us pictures all summer. We're hyped about some big bucks. We were getting some bucks on camera early in November, and then as of late, there weren't that many. And I actually went and hunted a different place as my first morning sit, which I like. I like mornings. In general, I like mornings. I feel like you have a bigger window of time that deer are on their feet in the mornings. And I also feel as if in hotter weather, you have cooler temps in the mornings. So, like, especially in these hot rut dates, like, it's November 7th or 8th, and it's like 70 degrees until sunset. Like, man, you just feel like you're hunting for the last 10 minutes pretty much. And I have a hard time with that. And I'll do it. I mean, I do it, half the time, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not my favorite thing to do. So, long story short, I really like mornings, and I chose my first morning in a different spot where I had historical encounters with a really big buck. I actually set up over the bed this buck had used, and didn't see a deer. Oh. So I was down, man.
How many bucks have you killed in mornings versus evenings this year?
Let me think about that. I've killed 2 evening bucks and 3 morning bucks. Missed another morning buck Actually missed a couple morning bucks, but really a real tough miss on another morning buck on Texas Public. So
I shot 3 bucks in the evening this year.
How about that?
It's
funny because that's how you and I both lean anyways.
Yep.
I think that, but I think that we both like the other hunt as plenty well enough.
Oh, yeah.
It's just I kind of tend to lean a little more.
I'm not missing mornings in October. Or nothing,
yeah, it's time to be hunting for sure. Now that does go to say that like late season mornings are tough. Anything food source mornings are real difficult unless you're hunting like that secondary.
You got to find a way to get close to the bed, man.
Yeah. But like a lot of times, on a lot of properties, right? I mean, on a big public piece, it's one thing, but if you have a small public piece or a private parcel you're hunting and there's ag around, like it's kind of hard sometimes to get past the ag.
I mean, it's all scenario driven, your decisions are, so.
For sure. But that's what I like to do a lot. I've killed a couple deer. I think this year by setting up and have some really good encounters too by like getting downwind of the food quite a ways and hunting deer on their way back to bed or bedding them and making stalks on them. I like that in the mornings. I feel like the deer on their feet in good daylight and you can usually make a play. Well, that's what the plan was that morning. Went in there, historical data, but no, didn't have a trail camera in that spot. We saw 2 scrapes in the headlamp on the way in, and it's just like feeling good, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you something, Tyler. I have been a proponent of scrapes a lot throughout our podcasting days. The scrapes haven't treated me all that well this year. I don't know what that's about. I still think that like late November scrapes are a good thing because you end up really understanding which scrapes are the ones that are getting used a lot. And if there's a scrape near you and a buck does come in, there's a decent chance he comes over there. But like just being like, oh, there's a couple good scrapes there, let's go set up in that area, that has not, or just finding some on the way in, it's like false confidence almost. Hasn't really paid off, I would say, too much. I'm not off of them. I'm just saying like I've been reconsidering a lot of things about sign this year, actually. Paying more attention to rubs, and that seems to have paid off a little bit. But anyways, we didn't see anything that morning. That's a long tale to tell you we didn't see anything. I love the setup, but dude, here's the deal. Anytime you're like, oh, this tree's the best, I love this setup, it usually doesn't pay off.
Yep.
So we made a plan for that next evening, and I'm like wanting to hunt from a tree because I killed a deer on the ground in Kansas, and I'm like, okay, it's time to set up in this cruiser saddle and hunt from a tree. We get on the maps, doing some onnexing, and are finding places. We're using the crop data layer a lot because the food sources are limited this year because of the drought. So we're finding food sources on the crop data layer and then checking them in the truck. And we found one that was real good. We're real excited about it. And
because not all of them are good because they've been planted, but they haven't had water.
Yeah,
in a lot of areas.
That's right. And no water means no plants.
So you got some that were planted at the right time and some that still haven't received any water. So we have to go check them pretty much.
Yeah, it's we found a really good one, and the place to hunt is like over a mile from the spot you park. So I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be awesome. And pull in there, park. There's no cars anywhere. We walk about a mile and a tenth back there and start like looking for a tree. And I see the tree that we're going to get in like 80 yards, and then like a dude steps out from behind it. And it's like, crap.
Is he waving his finger?
No, he didn't see us.
No.
But yeah, I definitely got Zimbabwe or whatever that guy's. What's that guy's name?
That guy. If you wouldn't have said that,
name, right? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you shouldn't have said it. I can see him right now. No.
Somebody's screaming at us right now.
For sure. Dikembe Mutombo.
Mutombo, that's right. Yeah. He never sees us. We leave out of there, find a really good sign on the way out too. It's like, oh, I'd like to hang a camera here, but it's got dudes. So We bounce, and here's where the public land shuffle starts. This is when you put the clown nose on, guys. Because like when your first plan messes up, like you need to have a backup plan. And I didn't have a great one that night. I knew there were some places close that I could bounce to, but I didn't like them very much. That's the hard part. It's like when you're up here with limited food, limited pieces of public ground to hunt, you're just like in a pinch. You're just in a bad spot where I could go over here, but it looks terrible. I could go over here. We've seen deer in the past, but the food's not good. Like, oh, there's 2 trucks there. We ran into that. My first bounce place had 2 trucks. So then you get to the point in the evening where it's like, okay, I don't have time to go set up in a tree now. So I'm going to be on the ground. What should I do? And I probably opted for the wrong thing and actually went in on the ground and did some rattling and definitely did some marking a spot off because there was 0 deer sign. We didn't
Were
rattle
you the guy
deer.
that walked in on me with rattling antlers?
Yeah, it's me.
Golly.
There's no trucks there, okay? So if you got dropped off, I'm sorry.
I did.
But that's the way love goes, baby. There's no deer on this place at all.
That dude doesn't have running lights either.
I know, dude. It's a G.
He's commercial, man.
On the way out, we got like 30 minutes left of daylight. Greg and I are almost back to the truck. We're talking in our normal voices, and all of a sudden we spook a buck. Like right by the truck. It's like, where did you come from? And then that's just, dirt in your eyes, salt in the wound at that point in time. Like, I'm just the dumbest of the dummies. Just feeling so stupid, Just done a bunch of stupid things that night when really what I should have done is drive around and learn more stuff about what deer we're doing. And I feel like it's a hindsight thing, but I feel like I would have done better with that. What were you doing at this point in time?
There's another person with no running lights up there. Dadgummit.
Yeah, dude, it's how we roll.
I don't know what I was doing. I think.
Didn't you spend a lot of time on the ground, or did you ever hang in a tree?
On the whole trip?
By this point in time.
I don't know what point in time this is really,
It's
but
kind of the first evening.
The first evening?
Or second evening.
Man, I don't know. I don't even know if I had my own play-by-play. I just know that it's probably the next morning when I had my encounter. That's about all I remember.
We had 2 good mornings, right? So Go ahead and tell us about your next morning.
Well, so I ended up, I talked about it earlier, but I saw, the next morning happens, and I've got a big piece of property picked out, and I mean there's some remote country that is pretty far from ag, but I'm like, man, there's a little bit of ag over here that's growing. I think you had told me that, and I went and looked at it or something. Well, I was going to make a play on deer coming back from that, and I get in there, starts getting light, and I'm like, I don't like where I'm sitting, looking at the map, looking at what, how steep this little draw is, and I don't like it, and I'm like, okay, I got to go make a play down here a little bit further in. So we work in. As we're working, across, of course, a big buck comes across the saddle from the direction we're headed and sees us. Big buck. Anyway, we work down into the main draw, and I see.
Were you late or just got caught?
No, we were in there just sitting in the dark for a while.
Yeah.
And I had to see what everything looked like to realize that I wasn't in the right spot. And once I did that, that's when we made our play. So anyway, made a play as deer 30, and it was just what it is. So
I remember how this morning went.
Is this the same morning?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the same morning that we were doing like a drop off for y'all, and then you like get out of the truck and then realize I can't glass from here this morning. It's too foggy.
Yeah.
So we all have to like kind of rethink the whole morning and end up like y'all were there early. We had to go set up in a tree, so we were running a little behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we ended up working down into the main draw, and as we're doing that, I'm looking at maps. Eric goes, "There's a deer," and I pull up my binos.
Eagle eye, man.
Yeah, it's a doe, and then all of a sudden there's a deer coming over the hill behind her, and it's a good buck. I can tell from here. So I'm like, all right, when he goes behind this little, hill, we're gonna drop down, take off at him, probably 400 or 500 yards. Goes down, we drop down, we're hauling, we're walking fast. I couldn't run that far. It was just a long ways. Well, we get over there pretty quick, and he hadn't even made it down into like the finger draw that he's in. I guess there's finger draws, and then in this story I'll just call, for the sake of it, I'll call fingers will be like actual like little ridges that die in the main canyon, basically. So the draws are between the ridges, but there's finger draws and fingers. So for the sake of this story, just remember that. Anyway, so this buck is up on a finger, up kind of higher up, and we're down at the bottom. We get caught out in the middle, like 120 yards from him probably. But we stopped as soon as we saw his rack coming up over the hill, so he didn't really get us that bad, but we are just some blobs standing out there kind of wide open. Doe's already gone through the finger draw. Well, the buck stands there for forever looking at us, and he's pretty relaxed ears, like his just demeanor is pretty relaxed, but he is cautious of what these two blobs might be, even though I hadn't seen them move yet. So he starts to kind of work to our right, which is he's going to get our wind, right?
Yeah.
But he's moving very slow and relaxed. Like I said, he's just going to walk over there. And so he starts to walk across this finger, and I can see that he's going to end up walking to where, he walks on the other side of the finger at enough elevation that he can't see us. And so he's still walking kind of across the top. Well, I tell Eric, I'm like, hey, let's, as soon as, and I should have been more clear, but I told him as soon as this buck gets, we get out of sight, we're taking off. So he gets out of sight, and you can see his rack still, but time is of the essence here because he's going to try to get our wind, come out on the other side of the finger or whatever, and I got to get to this finger so that I can get a shot at him. So his antlers, I can see them, but I can't see his head. I take off, and I don't think he saw us. I think he was just kind of like doing a thing where he was walking sideways, and he was going to walk back and check one more time before he dipped back over. So I see his antlers turn, and he starts to walk kind of back up the hill to get a look at us. I stop, and Eric's still walking. And I don't know, this is where, like, same deal as you were talking about earlier, where, like, if I hadn't had a cameraman, I think this would have worked out really nicely. But when you have a cameraman, you're kind of asking him to be a pro hunter and a pro cameraman at the same time. And Eric was being a pro cameraman for sure. He was nailing all the angles. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was not supposed to be a joke, but yes, it is funny. But like, he was like very concerned with getting two angles of this whole deal.
Awesome.
And it's great footage. Y'all will see it, next summer. But as he's trying to work his cameras and stuff, he's not paying attention to this deer coming back up the hill. So he's still walking, gets caught. All of a sudden, the deer is on high alert and got the forward ears and everything like that. So, and then he starts doing the chicken head bob thing when he walks,
not
and
good.
he's picking up his pace, and so it makes it way more difficult. Well, he goes back over the hill, chicken heading, and we take off at the point of this finger. And I get to it, and I hook around the side, and I kneel down, knock an arrow, and range this plum thicket at 45.
Ooh.
And when I kind of pull down, I'm kind of looking. I lean out a little bit. I'm trying to see, like, is there anything else I can range right in there? And all of a sudden, this sucker just appears, and he's looking right at me. You know what I mean? And
He caught you donecking.
oh man, bad. And so he bounds off. He sits there and looks at us for a second. Then he bounds off, and I draw back, and he was at 50, I think. He quickly gets further than that, which I don't feel comfortable taking at the time. And and I can see him. I'm at full draw. I can see him slowing down, fixing to stop and look. But it's going to be like 70. So I just let down real quick and lean back against the finger mountain, and I'm like hoping that he just gets curious again, you know what I mean? Which he doesn't, because he's about near downwind of us at this point.
Yeah, he's not a 2-year-old in South Dakota.
No.
He's a toad in Oklahoma.
Yeah, and he's heavy and just a nice 8. But anyway, he takes off.
Nate.
So that was pretty much that Nate encounter was pretty much my the majority of my excitement on the trip. And After that, things just got really difficult. I don't think we saw a deer. Well, we did see 3 does the next morning from way, way far away, but like we didn't hardly see nothing the rest of the trip.
So that same morning, after we worked out all of the relocation and stuff of y'all, Greg and I went to the place that we've had a camera hanging for a long time. And even though we didn't have great camera data from that, right, it was still like I just knew that it's a good spot because I also hunted there quite a bit.
Yeah,
and I just know
we had some good pictures of bucks, but they were all night.
Yeah,
pretty much.
And I just know that we're just on that. Like, again, I was saying, the front shoulder of the rut, I just know at any point in time it's going to turn on. Mm-hmm. And so, like, it's worth hunting this spot. It's a great rut funnel. It's got what you want, man. And so just, like, out of that hunter's intuition, I'm like, it's worth going in there, even though the camera hadn't been showing too much. And, don't get me wrong. We like these cameras, guys, and they work real good, but they don't tell you everything. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, our buddy Mark over there tell you the same exact thing, right? Like, they just aren't what they crack up to be, or like what some people try to make them out to be of like you just know wherever deer is, so you can just go in there and shoot them as soon as they show up on camera. It's just not how it works, man. Mm-hmm. So I went in there without good camera data, but I knew I had the wind that I love, and that is a like tough to hunt but deer favorable wind where it's blowing about 15 degrees. Good enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if it was lighter, it would swirl into a bad place. But it's strong. It's like 12 plus. So that's nice. We get in, and I know where there are a few trees. I've marked some hanging trees in the past. But actually, I make a audible. I planned on hunting like about 100 yards from this spot. And I just am looking at the wind direction. I'm thinking about the way the hills work and the bottom works and stuff. I'm thinking, this is going to actually work a little bit better for this wind. I'm going to go set up and be a little more conservative because we got some hunts ahead of us. Go in there, and the trees here are not all that great. I actually, I'm not a red light guy. I turn my high beams on whenever I'm looking for a tree to get in. I'm trying to figure out which one's going to be the best one. And I still had to pick a willow tree that I was 1 stick high in. My platform was probably 6 foot off the ground, but it is killer cover because there's probably 15 trunks on this thing, And Greg and I can both get in this deal. I set up kind of like awkward where my tether is actually hooked to a different tree, like it's like 180 degrees from the tree my platform's on, so I set the platform flat and I'm standing on it backwards, but it's actually real comfortable. I got some good shots. I got a ton of cover, and I really, really like it. And this is a T. Jones style setup. You like that 1 stick high stuff.
I love it.
And I do too, man, when it works, and it worked here too, because one of the things that I could have gotten a little higher in this tree, but like honestly, the difference in 6 and 9 is not that much as far as getting detected. But at 6 foot, if a deer comes in, they have to get real close to me before I get skylined. Whereas at 9 foot, they can skyline me a good bit sooner.
Yeah. So
I'm thinking about that, because my tree I got good cover, but still I'm a blob in a tree of tiny trunks, Anyways, it works out well. We're in there a little bit late, so we get kind of settled probably 5 minutes after shooting light. But it's an overcast, foggy day, so we're getting away with a lot too because deer 50 yards from us can't really see us very well, And we kind of hunker down, get calm, and I love to hunt with my ears. I listen a lot, which, we all do, right? But I really detect more deer with my ears than I do my eyes, I think.
Oh, okay. I was confused there when you said your ears. I thought you were talking about your Eric deer.
I hunt those a lot. But
nobody knows what I'm saying right now.
That's all right, dude. It's for us, man. I hear some sticks whipping around. And like, what is going on here? Because it's kind of windy, so I'm kind of like, what? Is that just like the wind hitting this willow tree weird or something? And I look at Greg, and he's giving me the Greg eyes, and I'm giving him the Greg eyes. So then I know we both have suspicions of this sound, and like it has a point in space where it's at. I can tell it's like 60 yards from us, upwind. Which let's go, you know?
Yeah, for real.
And so I'm thinking, man, this. I think Greg might have said it to me. He's like, I think that's a buck. And I said, man, I was wondering if it is. You know, you're just kind of like second guessing yourself a little bit. Well, I get out my rangefinder because I have it on me. I would have had to unzip my binos, or they were just not as easy to get to. And I've really found that, like, if you're in timber, like that 7-power rangefinder is pretty much enough to be able to see deer with. And I kind of like using it because it's so low profile. You just like one little hand up and look around. It's kind of nice, you know. And I can see like a deer down there. I can tell it's a deer at this point in time, you know, which probably means it's a buck. And then I see a main beam go through my vision. I'm like, oh, it's a shooter. So then I put the rangefinder down, and I know where this deer's at on this property because I've sat real close to here before, and I know that there's a trail up and over right there close to where he's at. He goes and noses up on that trail, and I'm freaking out because I'm like, oh, because I just know it's tough hunting, right? But I'm seeing a buck. So I'm like, I got to grunt this deer over or something. So I'm not ready. I don't have my grunt call in my pocket. It's in my backpack, which is real tough to get to because it's a weird tree. And I'm scrambling for the grunt call. And I'm like, hey, Greg, can you get my grunt call? And he's digging for it, and I'm watching the deer. I'm like, oh, no, he's coming. So, and this is all we're doing, you know, in the deer whisper, right? And so I was like, never mind on the grunt call. Greg gets around, gets the camera on him, and he like just kind of appears underneath this tree, and he's a toad. And I didn't realize how big he was. We'll talk about that more in a second. But like for sure shooter, like no question. He like I can tell. He's got a split on his right side. I've never shot a deer with a split. And I was like, oh, please, let me shoot this deer. And I see his left side's a little weak. And I'm thinking, I guess he's just kind of got a big side and a small side. And this deer comes in, ends up, and I said the thing I don't like to say, but he literally came in because he is like 8 yards from us, sees us in the tree. And we are just doing the ice sculpture thing, right? Just straight up, as still as we can be. We got some wind. He's not suspicious, but he sees some blobs. And he's like, what's going on? And it's enough to alter his path, which actually probably helps us. Because he then, like, circles out. He might have been thinking about going to smell us, but I think he just was like, that's not a deer. I'm going to go over here. You know, that's kind of what he's doing. He kind of does this little arc out and comes around, and I'm thinking, oh, I got a shooting lane right over here. He's about to get busted. And I can't shoot him. Like, if he was to continue coming on the trail he's on, he's going to get to 3 yards, and I don't really have a shot. And I'm like, if he's at 3 yards, I'm shooting through them twigs for sure. Like, no question. So I'm trying to figure out, like, how to navigate that. I got my bow in my hand, but I'm not going to be, I mean, it's going to be real tough. Well, then he arcs out, and I'm like, oh, this is perfect, dude. Like the 9 o'clock on the clock face shot, you know, where you're just so comfortable just making your perfect tee. Well, he stops and just goes to snooting so hard in this one spot. There was apparently a deer peed there or something because he just goes this crazy loud, you know. He's just going nuts. It's also crazy how fast they can puff the air in and out of their nose. they're real good at that. I'm like, I'm at full draw at this point in time. I draw when he's behind stuff, so I need him to take 2 more steps out, and he hasn't yet. I'm like, oh man, I don't want to be stuck at full draw forever because I have recovered from a sickness at this point in time, but I ain't real confident in my like 2-minute hold, you know. And it ends up at probably about the 25-second mark. He takes 2 steps forward and gives me clearing to shoot through. He's not completely clear of the stuff, And I decided to go ahead and let it fly because he's at a good quarter away. And dude, let me tell you what, it is a rip. When they're at 15, or I think he's 18 yards, it's my favorite, dude, because it's just, you don't, not that I'm not concentrating, but you just know, not without a doubt, but you feel real good about the end result.
Yeah.
Real good about it.
Yeah.
Especially on a quarter away because there's a bunch of soft stuff right there, you know? And I'd see where it hits. It's about 1/3 up the body. I'm shooting down. I know the exit's going to be good. It's a double lung. And we watch the deer run. And he runs pretty far. But we're up the hill, run across, and I see him pile up. And it's just, oh, my gosh, I lost it. It wasn't a cry I lost it this time. It was like I just excited, you know. Like it's weird how I have different reactions shooting a deer. You know, sometimes I'm like, man, that was awesome, just kind of just happy. And this time I just like lost my mind, just excited, you know. And then like with the Kansas buck, I'm bawling my eyes out, you know, because I've just been sick and I'm just probably delirious anyways.
Yeah.
It's strange how that happens. But I did clip a leaf or stick or something you can see in the footage in that. So I didn't black out, but I got, it could have messed me up. I was shooting a mechanical, but it didn't mess up the Aeroflot or anything. I think I'm learning.
Talk about what broadhead you're shooting, or what it's like at least.
I shot a 4-blade mechanical, 2 big wide ones and 2 like medium wide ones, and got a complete pass through. Hit the opposite leg bone and still got a pass through.
You shot a Vector HMR.
Shot a Vector HMR, and I'm on to something, I think, man. Like, mechanical fix doesn't really matter. Somebody's for sure screaming now when I say that. But,
that's a bold statement.
In this instance I'm discussing, let me finish here. It doesn't matter. I think that the heavier arrow tracks better through traffic.
Yeah.
Through brush. And I'm not a proponent of shooting through brush. I'm not deliberately doing it. But twice this year, once at a hog and once at a deer, once with a fixed, once with a mechanical, I have hit something on the way to the animal and it has had zero effect on the arrow. And I think that shooting a heavier arrow it's the laws of physics, right? Like, an object in motion will remain in motion until a force is acted upon it, and depending on the mass of said object, the force has has a greater or less amount of effect on the arrow, right? So I think that because I'm shooting 540 grains, which isn't stupid heavy, but it's nice and heavy. I really like where I'm at right now, I'll tell you the truth, because things are flying good.
Don't tell Isaac.
I know, dude.
You gave
I
him
like my
grief about
600s too, though. Dang, dude. But I've shot 5 deer, and they've all been complete pass-throughs this year.
And some pretty hard quarters, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and this one, I straight up hit his leg bone, you know, like
crazy.
On the way out, and still passed through. Now, I think it did bend a blade on the leg bone, but I've already made it through the whole critter, so I ain't too worried about that, you know? And, so got to go, actually called you, and I don't know where you were at in your hunt at this point in time.
Just literally had spooked the buck.
Dang.
The first big one. So
you still have another deer encounter after this.
I was pretty sick about it, and also very celebratory at the same time. Weird feeling.
Was. And this deer was just like such a blessing, man, because it's a hard hunt, and I just happened to be in a spot that worked well. And I've been saying this. It sounds kind of cliche, but dadgummit, when you have faith, there really ain't nothing cliche about it. Like, I feel like I have been blessed. I mean, this ain't prosperity. It's just the way it works, right? The whole life is a blessing that we have, right? Like, everything put here is a blessing that we get to enjoy. So I'm not saying that, like, God's job in the great universe is to make my life good. That's not what I'm saying. But he does bless his people, right? And it's cool because I feel like I've been blessed. God just put some deer in front of me, man. It is awesome, and I'm very, very thankful for it. And that's not to say that he ain't blessing you if you only had one deer in front of you this year. You know, that's not that's not how this works. You know, it ain't a token system. His will be done, and it just happens to be his will for me to kill a deer in Oklahoma, and I'm very thankful for that.
It was fun morning, man.
It was, man. Thank y'all for the help with the recovery. He's a mainframe 8 with a big old split on his right G2, and ends up his left side that I thought was kind of smaller. It really ain't all that smaller. It was just a weird angle. I was looking at it. He did have a main beam broke off on that side a little bit. Not so much that it affected like his look, right? But like he broke like a 2 or 3 inch piece off the end of his main beam on that side. So maybe that's what I was seeing. I don't know. But
his G2 on that side is longer than his other one.
It is,
which
dude.
You know, of course, it put more effort into growing a split on the other side.
Yeah,
So
I haven't measured it, but like that thing might be over a foot long.
it's out there, dude.
I don't know.
It's a big old time.
He's a big dog. I'm gonna get him mounted, I think, or I know because I dropped him off. But he's the biggest body deer I've ever shot, and I realized that. You know that slow motion thing that happens like at the moment of your shot and shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
Like you just see it. Like I can see it plain as a day. And I remembered when I shot, he kind of like rolled his body, and I was like, holy smokies, that's a big body animal.
Yep.
I didn't realize how big he was, and I didn't realize how big his antlers were because this deer might weigh 250 pounds. I mean, he's the biggest body deer I've ever shot.
Yeah, he's huge,
And
man.
so, like, his rack is relative to that.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how big he is.
Dude,
Monster.
the head on that thing was so big,
He's
dude.
got, I call it a pizza head, where, like, he doesn't have, like, the moose nose thing. You know, he's got this, like, really wide angle to his head. Where, like, his jaw and the top of his head is a wider angle. And it just, oh, he's so cool, man.
He is, dude.
I love deer.
Me too, man. Me too.
They're just awesome, dude.
They are. They're such a cool animal. They can thrive in so many different areas in such harsh conditions, and such wild, variable conditions, and they are big, but also easily disappear in the landscape, and just like such a cool thing. Also, so unique. You know, like. There's some people out there gonna be mad about this, man. But like turkeys, they look like a turkey sandwich to me. Is what they look like. You know what I mean?
Yeah, buddy.
There's
this one's got
differences.
spurs that are 1 1/16 inch long.
that's definitely, you know, there's stuff you gotta look at them harder.
Yeah.
But like, you know, from distance, whitetails look different than each other, and from distance, turkeys, you know, outside of the Merriam's white fan and the Eastern's darker fan or whatever, you know, like the intricacies are what you have to look for when you get closer. With a deer, man, it's like, oh, I can tell from distance that thing's got a split, you know, G2 or whatever. So I don't know. They're so unique. They're so, like I said, they're a big animal on the landscape and still yet very prosperous and like lots of them, and they live in lots of places and can be hunted lots of different ways, and just so cool, man.
Yeah, man. They are an awesome critter, and we're going to be doing even more of this hunting coming up pretty soon. So there should be a decent amount of stuff on the old Element channel here, guys, coming out. And we appreciate y'all's support as we kind of venture out and kind of do a few other things, and I think it's going to be really cool because we're putting together if I can be so bold to say, like some of the coolest whitetail stuff that will be on the old interwebs to be streamed, I think. I mean, I'm pretty partial, but
we're working hard to do that.
Yeah, buddy.
So, I mean, that's what the goal is.
That's why we're sick, man. It's because we've been working hard and we're run down.
I'm telling you, I think that for sure, man, and you know that's what we've set out to do this year. And we may not always do that, guys. So hopefully you enjoy what we're putting into it now, and we really do. When we talk about this stuff, we actually had everybody sit down when we got home, and you know look at the old TV at my living room, and we went through some of the videos the guys have been shooting lately, and talked about. You know, we did a critique and said, hey, here's this stuff is awesome. Way to go, guys, but we are trying to put together the best stuff. That's the goal. Put together the best deer hunting videos that exist on planet Earth. That's the goal. We may or may not achieve it, but we're we're doing cool stuff, and Greg and Michael and Eric have been a huge part of that, helping us get that done. And so, but we still give them, criticisms as we go so that we can make this stuff top notch.
Dude, one of them's got a real weird arm.
Yeah. Other than that,
we're pretty critical of that.
I still can't get over the daggum two behind us that let us run over the tail light. Sorry, they ran over our tail light.
Yeah, they
let it
over.
fall off at going 3 miles an hour.
Watched me from inside their warm truck while I tape on a redneck version of a tail light. Mm-hmm. So that's cool.
Oh, how did you find that tape? Was it because of Eric's great directions?
Yeah, we've learned this, I think, through the years, that when Eric says something, do the opposite of it, and it works out pretty good. And this is the case too with the direction as to where to find the duct tape.
When he says right back seat of the cab, he means left of the bed.
It ain't just getting east and west mixed up. It's it's way worse.
Left, right, and cab and bed and everything, dude.
Yeah, but they're doing all right back there. They doing some pretty good driving, I think. At least my truck's in pretty good shape.
We're about to stop and eat some dinner, but real quick, I want to talk about just a couple things before we do this that, you may do as you look forward here to the middle of November and starting to get into later November. We enter a lockdown phase, a lot of people like to call it. I'm not a super it's kind of similar to the October lull for me. Mm-hmm. I think there's, some things that are true there, but
I got
the deer got to
year,
exist,
sure.
right?
Yeah, they do.
Just like you said, you went to a place that you didn't have a whole lot of data, and the hunt was super slow. But that deer didn't just disappear magically.
No,
he lived
had to
in that.
exist.
He lived somewhere.
I had to get in. I'm convinced a 300-yard diameter bubble to kill that deer, and I happened to be there that morning.
And so with that, the lockdown is going to be a similar deal. So, you got to get in the bubble. And that's the same. It's a good point. It's the same idea that we've tried a few times. I think this is just an idea that you could help you as well. But you find a buck locked down. You get inside his bubble, and you give him some calls. You rattle to him. You grunt at him. You pull up a heads-up decoy or something like that, a Montana decoy, whatever. And I think, you stand a good chance of, if you're inside that deer's bubble, of making something, pretty amazing happen potentially. So, there's an idea as far as like lockdown stuff goes. Mm-hmm. Another thing is, I think we had somebody talk about this on Rut Fresh recently, but lockdown is when a buck is going to put a single doe probably in a position away from other animals. So you don't want to be hunting. If you feel like lockdown's happening and you're not seeing the bucks, then go hunt the homestead that's off to the side that's, an acre of timber and brush. Or go hunt the tippy top of a little canyon or draw that's got a few cedars in it, and just take a chance, right? If you're struggling already, you might as well go do something like that.
Sit somewhere you can see a whole bunch. And this ain't even got to be a Western approach. I mean, like you could sit, up on a ridge in the big timber and be able to look down at a bunch of different side finger ridges or draws or whatever. Mm-hmm. Or you could sit, on top of a silo that has a bunch of different ag fields that are, along a river bottom. And just, if you can get your eyes on a bunch of country, there's a decent chance you see a buck that you can go make a move on.
Buntry.
That's right.
I mean, those are a couple of thoughts about how you might attack this thing going forward. And then at some point, coming up around Thanksgiving is a good time of year to be in the woods too. So don't give up on it, man. I know you got family stuff going on and that kind of thing during Thanksgiving, but those deer that are in lockdown in the middle of the month here are going to get back out and start snooping around and searching, and you get right back into the doe bedding or food sources and those kind of things. You're going to have those. You might have a perpendicular trail that a buck's going to use on a food source where he's just basically walking the inside edge of a tree line on a cornfield or whatever. Just checking all those trails that lead into that stuff and lead out of that stuff, and downwind sides of thick bedding and stuff like that. So a couple of thoughts there as we go forward into the next couple weeks. I would rather hunt late November than late October. And I know that maybe that might be a weird sentiment for this current culture of deer hunting and what you hear in media, but I would give me the last weekend in November over the last weekend of October for sure.
Have you ever rode the Titan there at the Six Flags?
Unfortunately, yes.
Which was more fun, the kick or the bottom quarter of the big drop?
The kiki was terrible, and then the bottom quarter or whatever was a blackout. So I'm not exactly sure.
For me, the bottom quarter of the big drop is definitely the funnest. So
that's where you had your prostate problem start.
That's where it started, maybe there, or riding in a tuna boat going 50 miles an hour on 8-foot waves when I was a kid. Who knows, man? But guys, if nothing else, make sure you're safe. Our life's gonna attest to it, right? Yeah. The rut's a dangerous time. Could be tines going everywhere. Dadgummit, man, how many times have we almost been put our eyes out with deer in the back of the truck?
So many times.
So many times.
Brow times.
Watch out for them brow times, and remember, this is your element.
Live in it.
Hey guys, turkey season is in full swing right now, and if you are planning on getting after it, make sure to pick up some Meat Eater Phelps turkey calls to stuff into the old turkey vest or into your fanny pack right now. I carry a few different things. I like to use mouth calls, and I like to use pot calls. Mouth calls or diaphragms, I like them because it gives you hand-free calling, meaning when you're working a bird up close, you can have your gun on your knee, finger on the trigger, ready to roll, and still be making turkey sounds. I like pot calls. I just like pot calls. I enjoy calling with a pot call. Whatever direction you go, including a box call, which I don't personally use too much, but they're fun and great, and I started out with them. Yanni, on the other hand, one of my main turkey hunting buddies, he loves box calls. And what's funny is I'll now and then look to him and give him the look that means get out your box call and find us a turkey. So it's not that I don't like them. I just have Yanni use his. Then I don't have to carry it. Go to Phelps Game Calls. Get calls that are made in the USA and get calls that'll get them close. Find yours at phelpsgamecalls.com today.